Slovenia has a number of beautiful churches dedicated to Mary, Mother of God. These churches preserve the historical record of all those who have had a living faith and who have undergone much here on the sunny side of the Alps. For it was here that they had to face the most difficult of trials. Others, perhaps envious of the beauty of these lands, have brought Slovenians close to death on several occasions throughout history. Their ancestors suffered above all in the times of the Turkish invasions. Often profound faith in God's help and Mary's care were their only comfort, support, and strength against distress and resignation. The many pilgrimage churches were of key importance to them, including the Mother of God Basilica in Petroche, which from days of old has been a pilgrimage center for the entire Savinja Valley. Even today, it is a place of mercy for the contemporary pilgrim in search of spiritual peace and rest. Since the Dominican fathers began to work in Petroche, the place has become a focal point of Christian spirituality of the type once propagated by Saint Dominic. This is a spirituality that does not call for retreat from the world, but is thoroughly imbued with genuine Christian love, benevolence, and mercy. May the film that you are watching about this place of worship help you to experience beauty and spiritual rejuvenation. The history of the Basilica in Petroche extends far into the past. We can say with certainty that already at the end of the 14th century there was a church here. Like so many other places of worship, it was built in Petroche by the Counts of Celia in honor of the Blessed Virgin, or pro remedio animarum suarum, for the salvation of souls. Count Frederick of Celia, or according to the historian Janko Rosen, Count Ulrich, established the first chaplain's house here in 1442. Today, we cannot determine exactly what the church looked like. Nevertheless, we can, from the existing church, conclude that it was a lovely three-nave structure. When considering churches that were built by the Counts of Celia before or after the Petroche church, and which have retained at least their original Gothic architectural style, furnishings and frescoes, one can see that the Petroche church was among the loveliest. The remains of the columns or the semi-columns on the south side, the columns in the presbytery, as well as the windows and stone ornamentation on the bell tower evoke the first Gothic structure. The church's present Baroque form stems from the mid-18th century. The Baroque church we see today is thanks to the Milios, specifically Franz Milio, who died in 1752. This was a family of noblemen that owned the manor in nearby Novocelja. The basilica seems monumental, especially its impressive front side with the mighty entrance and elegant bell tower. The church is 37 meters or 125 feet long, and the front side measures 19.5 meters or 64 feet across. The main nave is 13 meters or 43 feet high. Built into the left and right sides are 4 chapels. Above the main portal, there is an engraved monogram of Mary. Looking at the light and impressive Baroque church which arose from the three-nave Gothic predecessor, one can confidently say that the renovations were a tremendous success. The building, with its architecture and interior furnishings, is a first-rate cultural and artistic monument and ranks among the most beautiful Baroque churches in Slovenia. Art historian Jože Curk is apt in calling the church one of the finest monuments on the Savinja River and a veritable village art gallery. The main nave and the side chapels are decorated by Jacobrolo's 1875 frescoes. On the ceiling of the main nave is written the Ave Maria and on the ceilings of the 5 side chapels, there are images of events from Christ's childhood. On the ceiling of one of the side chapels, we can see a depiction of Mary's marriage. On the west side of this chapel, above the confessionals, there are events linked to the sacraments of atonement and confession. The representations across from the left entrance into the church show times in which pilgrims not only from the entire Savinja Valley, but also those from many other parishes in Steyerska and from Kraj made their way to Petroche. The same painter, in 1870, also created frescoes depicting the Passion of Christ. In the choir loft above the main entrance, one is fascinated by the beautiful and famous organ built in 1796 by the Venetian Gaetano Callido. On the altar of the second chapel on the left, one can notice a depiction of the saints, John and Paul, and above them one of the church's finest works, the 1775 depiction of the Holy Trinity. A few steps further in the third chapel on the left-hand side is the famous Pleiner altar from 1605. The altar depicts scenes from Christ's childhood and is the oldest wooden Renaissance altar in Slovenia. At that time it was dedicated to Mary, Mother of God, but today it is dedicated to John of Nepomuk. The predella, or altarpiece ledge, and the 4 side panels were restored in 1967 after having been discovered by Victor Pausche. In the same chapel across from the Pleiner altar, we can see a monument remembering the tragic years of the First World War, a memorial to the fallen soldiers. The altars to St. Joseph in the 4th chapel on the left and St. Francis Xavier in the 4th on the right stem from 1855. In the 2nd chapel on the right, there is the altar of St. Florian and St. Martin, which is an 1802 creation of Joseph Goethe. Above the main altar, there is a painting of the Annunciation of Mary, which is an exquisite, older work. In this chapel we notice on the south wall the grave of Anton Cesar, a priest and commissioner in the nearby village of Žalec, who was born in the town of Gorica. Unfortunately, the inscription and the shield on the grave can no longer be discerned, though we can make out the year 1717. In the 3rd chapel on the left there is the altar of the Holy Cross from the second half of the 19th century. It is possible that here there once stood 4 older altars of greater artistic worth, perhaps even created by Pleiner. On each of the 2 holy water founts in the church, one sees the year 1665, while the one in the bell tower reads 1645. The pulpit on the left-hand side is from the late 18th century. Across from the pulpit is a large, artistically valuable painting that was a gift to the church by the former owner of the castle in Zalog. The painting, which depicts Mary with the infant Jesus, St. John the Baptist, and the angels, was most probably executed by an artist from the famous Italian school led by Andrea del Sarto. Experts agree that in this painting one can see the influence of 4 great Florentine artists, including Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. It is possible that here there once stood 4 altars of greater artistic worth, possibly even created by Pleiner. The oldest and probably the most lovely part of the church is the presbytery. Resting in the crypt below the new altar are the benefactors of the Petroche church, the Barons Milio from Novocelia, and their gravestones are built into the wall by the high altar. In this crypt rests also the daughter of the last owner of Novocelia, Fanny Hausmann, who was a poet and creator of the journals Celje Novine and Slovenia. The Anton Lerchinger fresco from 1760, restored in 1971, shines above us in the most vivid of colors. The fresco covers the entire ceiling of the presbytery and depicts the Assumption of Mary, the 4 evangelists, and the church fathers. It is likely that the same artist created the paintings of St. Vincent Ferrer and St. Francis Xavier on the walls of the presbytery. Finally, we have before us the very beautiful wooden Baroque altar from the 18th century with a wonderful image of the Blessed Virgin. She is situated between her parents Saint Joachim and Saint Anne, surrounded by angels and beams emanating from the Father God from above the altar. The statue is most probably the work of Wiedkönig. He is also the creator of the Petroche crosses, the 3 statues that stand outside the church. The picture of Mother of God is the Basilica's greatest treasure, as it represents the church's essence and life and has been inviting pilgrims from near and far for centuries. The Mary statue stands out especially when viewed from the vestry door on the right. The statue is almost life-size, and it depicts a smiling and crowned Mother of God with baby Jesus in her left hand and a scepter in her right hand. The statue was probably originally without a crown, and both heads were covered by wreaths with 12 stars, lending a particular tranquility and beauty to the portrayal. It is no exaggeration to say that no other portrait of Mary in these parts radiates such tranquility. On her bent finger on the right hand she is wearing a ring with a precious stone. Legend has it that the ring was a gift to Mary from Franz Emilio of Novocellia when he decided that he would never marry. Mary bent her finger as a sign of accepting his vows. The Basilica in Petroche is not only a very beautiful and precious work of art, it is also important as a pilgrimage church. For centuries, pilgrims have been drawn here through their belief in the strength of prayer to Mary. The Book of Thanks and the pictures of thanks behind the high altar bear witness to the fact that many have found refuge in her in times of trouble. For pilgrims, Mary has always represented health to the sickly, help for Christians in general, consolation for the downtrodden, and refuge for sinners. From the pictures of thanks, one can read that the Mother of God from Petroche has heard numerous prayers, and that her holiness has helped many once again find God and solace of the soul. The Petroche Church is especially sought out as a place of pilgrimage in the summer months, on Sundays, and on the Marian feast days. Pilgrims come here individually and in groups from the entire Savinja and Sava valleys, from Petroche, from Petroche, and from elsewhere as well. Some parishes organize annual pilgrimages to the Basilica. The Holy See granted the church in Petroche the honor of allowing some confessors who hear confession in the church special powers of absolution. The church was given the title Basilica by Pope John Paul II in 1984, and a stone plaque bearing the papal shield on the left side of the presbytery recalls this event. As mentioned at the outset, the Petroche place of worship is cared for by the Dominicans, the order of preachers. Since 1965, they have had their administrative center in nearby Žalec. This order originated in the early 13th century after the divine inspiration of the Spaniard Dominic de Guzman. He sent the first preacher brothers in 1217 to eminent universities in Paris, Oxford, Bologna, and Madrid. 1220 saw the first general meeting of the order in Bologna, when the first rules of the order were laid down. The Dominicans came to Slovenian soil as early as 1230 to Ptuj. The second Dominican monastery was founded in 1451 in Novi Kloster by Pozola. The order of preachers also have 2 other monasteries in nearby Haloze and in Koper. The church reforms of Kaiser Joseph II in the years between 1782 and 1787 called for, among other things, the dissolution of the Dominican monasteries in Slovenian territory. In 1965, the Dominicans returned to Slovenia. In Žalec, they administered the parish and the filial church, Mother of God in Petroche, where they later built their own order house in Petroche. And so today there are 3 Slovenian Dominican priests in 2 independent communities in Žalec and in Petroche. The Petroche parish spent 2005 and 2006 renovating the glebe house, which was returned to the church under the denationalization laws, albeit in a state of disrepair. The glebe house was renamed Dominico Dom, or Dominican's Home, and its rooms on the ground floor are now set aside for all generations, from children and youth to adults and the elderly. The building was blessed on the feast of the birth of the Virgin Mary on September 8, 2006 by the guest of honor of the parish, Slovenian Metropolitan and Bishop of Ljubljana, Alois Uran. Dominicans revere the spark that belief ignites in their fellow humans, and they strive to help this spark turn into fire. We believe that the divine in humans grows slowly, but with determination. This belief leads us to the lending of the sacrament, announcing the kingdom of heaven, catechesis, and to personal contact with children of the parish. Our order is also active in the area of publishing. We founded the publishing house Znamenja, or Signal or Sign, which publishes a journal of the same name dealing with theological, philosophical, sociological, and cultural topics, and keep abreast of occurrences that are important for a dialogue between the faithful and others, or between the Church and the modern world. We would like those of today's world who are often baffled and burdened to find a joyous and freeing message. The doors of the Church and the houses of our order are welcoming and wide open to all. All of our activities are aimed at the belief that, while we are the sowers, God Himself provides for growth.